This week's Torah portion is actually two portions. Only in leap years are they taught separately. Thus, in Hebrew, the combined teaching is called Vayakhel-Pekudei. And in English, it just means he's assembled. All right. The next word is accounts. Now, the term accounts does not mean bookkeeping. It means the telling of the history of something. And in this case, it's the history of the tabernacle. So we'll read only a small amount of what's written, but it'll be enough to well represent what I would like to focus on today. So Moses, with a veil over his face to filter out the visible radiance resulting from being in God's presence, he assembles the entire community of Israel to announce to them all that Yahweh had told him over these 2 40-day periods of time. And as much as anything, though, this formal gathering was to commemorate the renewal, or better, reinstitution of the covenant in a public way. So for a total of 80 days, Moses had been getting instructions from God for Israel. Now, 2 times he ascended the mountain for periods of 40 days each, coming down after the first period to interrupt the golden calf catastrophe. It's no wonder it took him years and the help of some scribes to write down all that the Lord had told him. It would have been the elders of Israel, the people's representatives, which assembled before Moses to hear these edicts and affirm the renewal of the covenant. I mean, it was usual and customary having only the leadership present. Besides, there was no way Moses could have made himself heard to 3 million people. Now, let's be clear. For many chapters, Yahweh has been instructing Moses on the specifications for the tabernacle, the furnishings, the ordination of the priests, the establishment of certain appointed times, and more. Now, however, these instructions are finally being passed along to the people of Israel through their leaders, and actual construction is about to commence. Now, the interesting thing to me is how many chapters of the Torah deal with the tabernacle that was built in the wilderness and carried around for near to 40 years until it was put to rest in the city of Shiloh. From there, it finally was brought to Jerusalem by King David. The Torah writes about the tabernacle a total of 45 chapters. Exodus has 13 chapters devoted to the tabernacle. Leviticus has 18 chapters. Numbers has 13 chapters. Deuteronomy finishes it up with 2 more chapters devoted to the tabernacle. See, when we open our minds to realize this, it is actually kind of shocking. I mean, think of it. By sheer volume alone, the majority of discussion and instruction in the entire Torah is about the tabernacle. No other topic even comes close to the amount of ink spent on it. From its dimensions to material, to its furnishings, to its operations, who may serve in it, all of it's covered. I mean, if we're going to approach the Bible in a mature way, well, we need to ask why. Why about so much of it? Why does God spend so much time concerning the tabernacle? I mean, if the Bible is rational, logical, and not whimsical myth, then the why of many things ought to be able to be discerned and revealed. Do you know that only happens if we want to uncover the greater depths of God's word? So why does the Torah spend so much text dealing with this tent built by Aaron and his son and the Levites in the wilderness? There are probably several different reasons that can be given. To begin, it seems that it is so that the people of Israel would know and understand that the presence of God is in their midst and that they are partners in a cooperative venture with Him. Further, the tabernacle was a constant reminder of God's presence, dwelling with them in their camp on the same earthly level they were on. See, this unique tent served as a blueprint for how Israel was to approach God in holiness, in purity, and in reverence. The furniture and the symbolic elements inside the tabernacle were constantly communicating messages that enhanced the presence of Yehovah, whose meeting place was at the center of the camp of Israel. Perhaps the most important element was the fact of the gift that every single family and adult individual of the camp of Israel brought. Knew this half-shekel gift was a part of the foundation that kept the tabernacle standing. Every woman knew that her gold earrings and bracelets were shining in the tabernacle menorah by day and by night because they had been melted down and reformed into something holy. The idea that the people were partners with God and each had an actual physical part in the place of God's dwelling was a very important aspect of the feeling of ownership and belonging and partnership with the creator of the universe. This is the reason why I think the Torah has so much telling and retelling and enumerating the tools and furniture and materials of the tabernacle of the Lord, then later on his temple, and then even as expressed in Ezekiel, the final temple that's yet to come. Because Israel carried this tabernacle with them, whether in the day or night, no matter where they camped, they knew and felt comfort that the Father's presence was constantly there. This is a comfort those who trust God and His Son can have right now, even though neither tabernacle or temple exists. You know, in contrast to the movable cloth tabernacle in the Sinai desert was the eventual stone building of the temple in Jerusalem by Solomon. Listen to 1 Kings 5:15-24. Hiram, king of Zoar, sent his servants to Shlomo because he had heard that they had anointed him king in his father's place, and Hiram had always loved David. And Shlomo returned this message to Hiram. You know that David, my father, wasn't able to build a house for the name of Adonai as God because of the wars that beset him from every side until Adonai put his enemies under the soles of my feet. But now Adonai, my God, has given me rest on every side. There is neither adversary nor calamity. So now I intend to build a house for the name of Adonai, my God, in keeping with Adonai said to David, my father, your son, whom I will put on the throne in your place, he will be the one to build the house for my name. Therefore, order your people to cut down cedar trees from the Lebanon for me. My servants will be with your servants. I will pay your servants according to everything you say, for you know that we have no one among us as skilled in felling trees as the Tsidonim. And when Hiram heard Shlomo's message, he was very happy and said, Blessed be Adonai today, who has given David a wise son to rule this great people. Then Hiram sent Shlomo this message. I have heard the message you sent to me. I'll do everything you want concerning cedar logs and cypress logs. My servants will bring them down from the Lebanon to the sea. I'll make them into rafts to go by sea to whatever place you tell me, and we'll have them broken up there, and you will receive them. You will compensate me by providing food for my household. So Hiram gave Shlomo all the cedar logs and cypress logs he wanted. By the way, you'll find this passage beginning in verse 1 of 1 Kings 5 and most other Bible versions in the complete Jewish Bible. So interestingly, as it turns out, the temple in Jerusalem was built by 50,000 foreign workers sent by Hiram from Tyre. The building material was from Lebanon. There was no substantial participation on a volunteer basis by the people of Israel in building of the temple in Jerusalem. Now, the tabernacle was at a location in the middle of the camp of Israel. And when Israel moved into Canaan, settled that place, and Moses gave each tribe land allotments, then the temple that was eventually built was set in Jerusalem, that was at the spiritual center of Israel's encampment, even though it certainly was not the geographical center. That temple in Jerusalem was also to remind people that God was with them. Now, what's most important of great significance is Solomon's prayer for the dedication of the temple in Jerusalem. It's something that sets that temple in Jerusalem apart from every pagan temple to any of the pagan gods. There are already some magnificent temples existing in the world. There were magnificent temples in Babylon and Egypt. In Luxor, Egypt, there was one temple that was as big as 4 football fields together under one roof. Much of that temple is still standing. So here's what Solomon said in the dedication of the temple in Jerusalem. It speaks of a paradox about the temple in the wilderness and the temple in Jerusalem. That paradox is that while God dwells in heaven and that no man-made structure can house him, yet a part of him will dwell in that earthly temple to be near to his people. Now, this reality has been the cause of divisions within both the synagogue and the church for centuries in trying to understand it. Listen to 1 Kings 8:22 through 32. Then Shlomo stood before the altar of Adonai in the presence of the whole community of Israel, spread out his hands towards heaven and said, Adonai, God of Israel, there's no God like you in heaven above or on earth below. You keep covenant with your servants and you show them grace, provided they live in your presence with all their heart. You have kept your promise to your servant David, my father. You spoke with your mouth, you fulfilled it with your hands, so it is today. Now, therefore, Yehovah, God of Israel, keep what you promised to your servant David, my father, when you said, you will never lack a man in my presence to sit on the throne of Israel, if only your children are careful about what they do, so that they live in my presence, just as you have lived in my presence. Now, therefore, God of Israel, please let your word which you spoke to your servant David, my father, be confirmed. But can God actually live on the earth? Why, heaven itself, even the heaven of heavens, cannot contain you, so how much less this house I have built? Even so, Yehovah, my God, pay attention to your servant's prayer and plea, and listen to the cry and prayer that your servant is praying before you today. That your eyes will be open towards this house night and day, towards the place concerning which you said my name will live there, to listen to the prayer your servant will pray towards this place. Yes, listen to the plea of your servant, and also that of your people Israel when they pray towards this place, here in heaven where you live. And when you hear, forgive. If a person sins against a fellow member of this community and he's made to swear under oath and he comes and swears before your altar in this house, then hear it in heaven. Act and judge your servants, condemning the wicked, so that his way of life devolves on his own head, and vindicating the one who is right, giving him what his righteousness deserves. The Apostle Paul said very similar things when he spoke to the judges of the high court of the Athenians at the Areopagus, right below the magnificent buildings of the temple of their pagan gods in the Acropolis. Listen to what he said in Acts 17:24-25. The God who made the universe and everything in it, and who is Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in man-made temples, nor is he served by human hands as if he lacked something. since it is he himself who gives life and breath and everything to everyone. See, this is important for us today, especially those of us who have our own buildings for our own congregations. Our buildings are great blessings, and they're very important tools to serve God and even more to serve those who want to worship with us as part of this community of believers. Even so, our buildings are not holy nor sacred. There is no building of any synagogue or church or edifice that's holy. We must remember that the temple in Jerusalem was not so much the house of God, it was a house for the people of God to serve him, to feel that what they do represents God for the people who came to worship him, but also for those who may not know who he is yet. One cannot help but notice what the very first instruction in chapter 35 concerns: the Sabbath. We need to come to grips with God's priorities. And if it's not obvious to you by now that Sabbath is right at the top of the list, you either haven't been here or you've not been paying attention. In verse 3, God's command is that not only is Israel not to do any kind of work on the Sabbath, but even starting a fire is prohibited at the expense of death. Why is starting fire such a big deal? The only reason to have a fire was either to keep warm for a chilly evening or to use it for some form of work. They could keep warm in plenty of ways out in the wilderness without fire. It simply was not that harshly cold where they were living. But a fire was needed for most types of work, for cooking, for the metal arts, for the concocting of dyes, for cloth, for baking earthenware, a whole wide range of crafts. For you physicists out there, notice what the essence of fire is. It's the conversion of matter into energy. Fire is a transforming force. And God was ordaining a state of stillness and stability on the Shabbat. The only authorized use of fire on the Sabbath was for sacrificing, and the priest performed that ritual exclusively at the Tabernacle. See, hundreds of years later, Yeshua would tell his disciples to rest in him. We are to rest in and depend on the finished work of God. It is the Sabbath that sets up this God principle and gives us a model for what this is communicating. I'm going to be harsh for a second. That the Constantinian Church has taken it upon itself to abolish or change the Sabbath to something else, yet believes to do so is righteous and more honoring to Christ, is a terrible thing. Because fundamentally, that sets the church in opposition to God. In so many ways, in the Old and New Testament, we are shown that our works, our efforts to achieve a saving kind of righteousness before God is worse than useless. It's offensive. In fact, when God provides the way for our holiness, it's that which we are to rely on. We are not to dismiss it and work towards our own way. We're not to try to use his way in combination with our way. We can never add to what God has done, so try to do so is to diminish it. A couple of chapters ago, Yahweh told Israel that the way to be holy in his eyes began with what? Observing the Sabbath. The Sabbath would clothe Israel in his holiness. He didn't give Israel a choice of options A, B, or C. With the advent of Yeshua, the way to be holy in God's eyes and Yahweh's eyes is to have faith in his Son, and that trust and faith represents our faith in the Father. That will be our holiness. Our human efforts to be holy, to work our way towards holiness, are as filth to God. Our ways, reflected in our behaviors and our doctrines, can do nothing but pollute and define the only means of holiness that He's provided. The Sabbath rest and the Messiah's rest are one and the same. One did not abolish, nor end, nor change the other, nor is one a substitute for the other. Though the final 5 chapters of Exodus are full of details, most of the details we read earlier in earlier chapters as God gave them to Moses as he stood alone on top Mount Sinai. Now these same instructions are repeated to the people, and the work to do them begins. So to finish our Exodus Torah portions, I'd like to take just a few minutes to examine those parallels between the creation story at the beginning of Genesis and the building of the wilderness tabernacle at the end of Exodus. It cannot be coincidental that the story of creation tells of 6 days of works and then a 7th day of completion and rest, just as is the pattern for constructing the wilderness tabernacle. Here we have emphasized yet again the never-ending nature of the Sabbath, its connection to the 7th day, the holiness intrinsic to it, and the ceasing from our works that is central to its meaning. At the same time, notice how God has set apart a group to do service to Him on behalf of the people. Yet another God-ordained paradox that is so difficult to translate across time and culture, and therefore it creates so much debate. See, if one compares the creation story to the building of the tabernacle, we see a similar structure and use of phrases. For instance, upon God's completion of His creation, the Bible says that Jehovah saw all that He had made and found it very good. In like pattern, upon completion of the tabernacle, Moses looked it all over and pronounced it completed in accordance to God's plan. That is, the construction of the universe and the construction of the tabernacle both represent God's vision, precisely brought into existence. And that's why there were so many chapters of details about the tabernacle. Another invaluable connection to observe in the similarity between the creation and the building of the tabernacle is that creation of our universe consists of 4 dimensions. 3 of these dimensions, length, width, and height, make up what we call space. 4th dimension is time. Our universe consists only of those 4 dimensions. The tabernacle enshrines the sacred nature of space. The Sabbath enshrines the sacred nature of time. Therefore, the tabernacle, together with the Sabbath, is a monument to the creation. And the Bible makes this connection a number of times. Now, Moses certainly did not look over all that had been built and use God's pronouncements that it was exceedingly good. That would have gone a little too far, because this dwelling and its furnishings had been man-made, accomplished by human hands, even though it was God-ordained. See, it was just a shadow of perfection, a shadow of God's spiritual dwelling place in heaven. The intent for the wilderness tabernacle was to represent a piece of heaven on earth, a holy place. And when we get into Leviticus Torah portions, we will see that the primary purpose of the sacrifices and the rituals was to protect and maintain, at times repair, the relationship of holiness and peace between God and Israel. We also find that the tabernacle was erected on the 1st day of the 1st month of the new year. This too corresponds to the creation narrative. That is, creation marks the first day of the first month of the first year in the history of history. Human life had never before existed. And after the completion of the tabernacle, new life officially began with God now dwelling among his newly set apart people. An entire new chapter in the human race had begun. Even more, we see this same pattern had occurred when God destroyed the world by flood. It was on the first day of the first month of the new year that earth was finally dry, so that he could restart the earth's human population with people that he had declared righteous. The first of Aviv, the Hebrew religious calendar's first day of the new year, is all about creation and regeneration. It is accomplished, as is all else in the Bible, in a dual manner, spiritually and physically. Just as the wilderness tabernacle was a physical, earthly model of Yehovah's spiritual dwelling place in heaven, so is the Sabbath a spiritual concept with a physical counterpart. The Israelites were to physically rest after 6 days of work. Believers are to spiritually rest in Messiah as well as physically rest on the seventh day, a day of holiness. To end the book of Exodus, according to Moses, had all that God ordained to make his earthly meeting place with his people acceptable to him, had that been accomplished? Apparently, because in verse 34 we're told that the glory of God, a special manifestation of God, filled the wilderness tabernacle. He was approving, holifying, occupying every area of the tabernacle. The holy place, that front room of the tabernacle, and the Holy of Holies, the back room of the tabernacle. But soon he would withdraw to exclusively the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant with its mercy seat rested. From that point forward, he would occupy only the Holy of Holies portion of the tent. So, what happens next? That's what the Leviticus Torah portions are going to tell us.
For more teachings and information, visit us online today. Come and be a part of our fellowship here at The Seed. Enjoy worshiping and learning God's Word with us.